All right, so let me tell you about September. September, I had big plans. I was gonna make y'all some videos and I was gonna read a bunch of books. Those books included Kindred. Well, I was gonna get through the graphic novel adaptation. I've read the prose of Kindred. So Kindred, Water Dancer, War Girls, Akata Warrior, The Broken Kingdoms. That's the second book for the 100,000 Kingdoms that I read in August. Escape and Exodus. That was the solar powered. What did I get through, you ask? Well, let me tell you. I got through about a quarter of the graphic novel adaptation of Kindred, which wasn't really a problem for the OEB slow read because I've read the prose version already and it is one of my favorite books. So it's very prominent in my mind and it's the story I revisit. Despite its extremely heavy themes as a Black woman in America. And the reason why I got through about a quarter of it is because I read all of The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is 100% set in what is essentially the antebellum South in Virginia, in the United States. You know, when me and my people were more explicitly treated as cattle. So I can really mentally do reading both of them in full during the same month. But this was a new story and I was buddy reading it in September, not only with Noria over at the Chronicles of Noria, but also in Jiri over at Onyx Pages. Tati at Musical Tati was supposed to be reading with us, but she did not. And I respect her decision, unlike some of us. And Jerry. No, just kidding. We are kind of salty that she didn't read it with us, but it's fine. We're still friends. Anyways, about the book. So this is the highly anticipated. First of all, this book came out last year in 2019, which is when I didn't read it, obviously. But after I finished reading this book, I actually looked up a little bit and realized that it was the Oprah's book club pick when she redid her book club. I don't know nothing about Oprah's book club, so the only significance that had for me is the fact that, like, oh yeah, I heard so much about it last year, even though I was very like Booktube adjacent, and I go into bookstores and I see books and covers move me. That's mostly how I was choosing books, you know? And I had a couple authors that I was looking for, aka Octavia, like specifically anytime I saw a book of hers. Anywho, so I was like, this explains why there was a lot of talk about it at the onset of the book coming out in 2019. So this is the highly anticipated fiction debut for award-winning author Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's best known for his nonfiction work, such as Between the World and Me, which I actually read last February of 2019, and it stuck with me. I only have like not that many posts on my personal Instagram, even though I've had it for a few years, and that's one of the posts I posted the day I read that book, because I read it all in one day, which is highly unlike me. Anywho's, so his works include Between the World and Me and We Were 8 Years in Power, the Case for Reparations. So he's, well, sorry, my candle smells so good. I'll tell you about this candle later probably, but I'll tell you about it now. It's fine. Let's go on a tangent. So one of my really good friends curates candles and hand pours them, and they have a very signature, distinct scents. Yeah, she operates a candle shop called Sola in the City Candles. You can look it up. I highly recommend. I'll leave a link in the description box below. This is not a paid ad or anything like that. I just love these candles. They smell so good. I actually have every scent that she currently has produced. I don't want to say available because she sells out pretty quickly. So her store is currently sold out. But sign up for the mailing list and you'll know first thing when they're back in stock. And then you should buy it within the first like 2 to 3 days because then they sell out again. But anyways, her current collection is called All in Her Name, and she has 4 names. And so each candle is a different one of her names and has completely different scent profiles that have very, in my head, distinctive personalities. So this one is Kara, and I usually light one of the candles every night since I've gotten them. Actually, I usually light Tosin in the daytime because it's a like citrusy kind of, reminds me of the beaches, actually helps to get me like a little bit more focused when I'm doing work. So it's actually over on my desk and I like that one during the day. Anywho, so I have this one lit right now. Set a mood, help me get into the vibe to record some videos. I'm realizing my camera is out of frame of my camera, but I have a couple more up on the top shelf. It might be kind of difficult to see because my bookshelf is dark, but there's one of the vessels there, and there's another one over here. Anywho's, so point is, I have tea. It smells good in here. It's a whole vibe. It's a whole vibe, whole mood. I got my plant babies over here. We got my new baby. My new baby's name is Boomy. She goes by she, her pronouns. But also she don't really care. Cause gender is a social construct and she don't like gender norms, okay? I mean, she is named after 2 different male characters in Avatar, so actually her name is Boomy the Third. That's her full name. And then we got X over here, which is my aloe plant. Oh, this one is the Fidonia. I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's the nerve plant. And then I got an aloe plant over here, which name is X, which look at the pot, I got it. Also have little X's on it. It's so cute. And then this one, which I don't have a like pot for it yet. Its name is Baby K. Mostly because I had one that was a very similar plant and I named it Khadijah, and then I kind of killed it. But in my defense, I think it was overwatered already when I got it from Trader Joe's. And so I kind of just like let it go. But anyways, this one's Baby K. And Baby K is thriving. I've had it for a minute, like 2 months or so. Anywho's. The water dancer. Let's talk about it. Did I get through my introduction of the water dancer? Let me look at my notes. I took a lot of notes when I was reading this book. Yeah. I got through my introduction I wanted to say for it. I took a lot of notes when I was reading this book. Part of them are on my phone, which is what I'm recording on, and I'm realizing that I won't have access to. But it's fine. It's fine. And part of them was like written down on a Post-it note or something. I did a hybrid read of this, and so I have the advanced copy that I borrowed from a friend, and I listened to the audiobook simultaneously because I also wanted to be able to get through some of the book when I was on my like daily walks, and I can't read this book and walk at the same time. Anyways, so what is the plot about? Y'all, this is gonna be a great video for y'all. Okay. The water dancer. I'm literally looking at my notes, but let me look real quick what I was gonna say. So the water dancer is a story about when the story starts, a young boy who grows into a young man named Hiram Walker in Virginia during a time of bondage, in which the people in bondage is typically referred to as the tasked, and those who engage in human trafficking and slave labor are called the quality. And so Hiram Walker is born and raised into this system, into this mess, into this world, as a member of the tasked. His mother was tasked, and so too he finds himself. The interesting thing about Hiram is that on the estate that he lives on, called Lockless, his father, his sperm donor, his mother's rapist, is the owner of the estate. So that is a very interesting position that puts him in. Heavily influences the way in which the story progresses because of the ways in which that positions him through life. In addition to that, Hiram has a gift for memory, but there's a whole chunk of his memory that he doesn't have access to around his mother. And that is kind of all you need to know going into the story. The rest of this review will be heavily spoilery. I will put something on the screen to say when the spoilery part is over and when it's just at the end when I say how much I rated it. But yeah, so basically we're about to get into some spoiler shit now. Before I get into spoiler shit, I've kind of developed a system for rating, which I believe I recorded a video for months ago, but didn't share. So I gotta look and make sure I did that and share that maybe ahead of posting this. The wick is wood and it like makes little soft crinkly sounds. That's why I just zoned out at it, because it's really setting a real nice mood up in here right now. Anywho, so I've come up with this system rating that should work pretty well for the fiction that I read, especially around like science fiction and fantasy and things like that. So I kind of developed this system so that my ratings would be more useful to you all and not just be like based on like my very vague feeling of how I thought about the book. And so you'll understand more of why I rated the book the way I did, so you can be better informed about if you want to read it or purchase the book yourself. So it's a 5-point system. It has the setting / world building, character development, themes, my overall enjoyment, and whether I would recommend or if I'm planning on purchasing the book. So let's start with number 1 for The Water Dancer, the setting / world building. The setting is antebellum South America, Virginia, on a plantation. So like, because most readers will have a idea of what that is, it helps to set the scene. However, one thing I did appreciate about the way that Ta-Nehisi told the story is that he used different terms. And by using different terms, such as the task and the quality, it allowed for you to at least a step back to envision the world more as he's laying it out, instead of bringing everything that you would connotate with certain words into it. So, and it also makes sense that the words that we use to describe that time in American history would not be the same words that those who were presently experiencing it used, right? Because the way language and understanding develops over time. So I thought that aspect of it was a good idea, and I think it was well done. You could also tell that there was quite a lot of research that went into the book, or at least was used and repurposed in this book. And I say that was used or repurposed because I do know that Ta-Nehisi Coates has a very extensive research background into this time period based on the fiction writing that I've read of him and the fiction writing that I know that he's produced that I haven't read of him. So whether or not all the research was for this book or not, I could tell that this book was very heavily informed by a lot of actual research. And that was both a positive and negative as I actually read the book. You'll note this book is a chunker. Is she a little thick? She not like crazy thick like some books that I've seen, but she's definitely among the thicker of a book that I've read. And also, I'm grabbing Kindred off the shelf right now to show you for a comparison's sake. So Kindred is 264 pages long, and it's about normal novel size. The Water Dancer is 401 pages, at least, pre-final edits. And it is also a bit bigger, just like in general, the pages are a bit bigger. So that is to say, the book includes a lot of words. And a lot of them are used to set the scene and to world build. And so as I was getting at, that was kind of positive and negative as I read it. Some things I thought I could have definitely done without, such as there's a scene in which Hiram is taking us through in great detail all the steps to like doing laundry. So it kind of really emphasized the labor-intensive task of it. So I understand why and he'd not done that task before, right? So he's also learning all these steps. So it made sense for the story, but it's also a spot where I feel like editorially could have been cut down to a size a lot smaller than that. And that is because I think in other places where we could have used more heavily descriptive and just like more in-depth words to kind of set the scene and explain to us a little bit more about what happened, aka at the end, they weren't there. So yeah, but I think also another example of a positive thing that was awesome to see, that I knew upon reading it that it was a result of research that I then had a desire to research myself, which is there's a scene in which Hiram is talking to someone. Oh yeah, I said I was gonna do spoilers. So Hiram ain't in Virginia no more, okay? He up in Pennsylvania and he's talking to one of the dudes. I'm not gonna say names to a lot of people besides Hiram because the names are actually different in the final version that I listened to on audiobook and in the arc. So the titles got changed. Or not the titles. God. The names of individuals were changed from the arc version to the final version. I don't know the rhyme or reason behind that, but it was a thing that I noticed, and it has since made it difficult for me to retain a lot of the people's names that he met when he was in Philly or Pennsylvania. Anyways, so there's a scene in which he is in Pennsylvania and he's talking to one of his comrades, and they are discussing how there was a fever that ravished. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that word. The city, and the whites brung in a bunch of black people because they decided that we were immune. And look at that. What happened? We died. And sorry, y'all. I know that was probably aggressively loud, but the times we live in makes stuff like this when I'm reading it irritate. Like it just sits right forefront in my spirit. Anyways, so and then they buried them in kind of like a mass grave that was unmarked, and then they built like housing like for wealthy people on top of it. And so they're literally living on top of these bodies. And as I read it, it fit very well into like the way that the story flowed. It flowed very well, but also I immediately asked the question, like, is this something that really happened? Is there a location? Where is this location is actually what I thought. Not is this something that really happened, because it's not something that surprises me by being true. Just I want to know where the location is, because I would never want to be in a position in which I lived in one of those houses, or I know it also makes me question, considering the way that this country was founded, the possibility of like that being true for most places that people are, when it comes to the Native American population. So like, anyways, so that was an example of when the research that was very clearly put into the book really added a lot of value, I think, for me as a reader. So anyways, I'm gonna give them full star for that. Also, I think as a component of the world building, I would include the fantastical elements of the story and how well those were developed. So I think it was pretty well done. We don't get a full like explanation in the way in which we get explanations about how things work in some other fantasy or sci-fi reads, but it is very appropriate for the setting and for the story and for the characters that we don't. But we are able to understand it, how it works enough to get a pretty full idea of how it works, at least to the extent in which Hiram understands how it works, right? Because he's also new to this power. And I'm purposefully not really saying a lot about how it works right now. I might talk a little bit more about it when I talk about the themes, but I mean, it's spoilery, but not really. I'm gonna listen to this later and see if it's really spoilery, my review. Anyways, full star for setting. Next up is characters. So, my space on my phone is really running low. So, next up is characters. Hiram was extremely annoying. I don't know if it's just because he is an irritating man. I went from reading Rosewater to reading The Water Dancer, and I think I was just really over reading from the male perspective, and I was like, I'm so done being in these dudes' heads. But he was also his character was a very interesting character, and the more and more we learn about his background, the more and more the way in which he interacts with the world makes sense, because he is missing a very quintessential chunk of his memory, and it really impacts how he moves through the world and what he's able to understand and what he's able to emotionally connect with, right? And we see through most of the story his inability to really do that, to really be present in his space. He almost is like an observer, even though he's living through the time. Anywho, he was a very interesting character, but he is also very fully developed and explored, which makes sense because he's our main point of contact. He is our protagonist. If he wasn't, I would be like, this book is trash, okay? Some of the other characters were like Maynard, his biological brother. They share a father. He is part of the Quality, and he honestly dies pretty early in the book. So we don't get a three-dimensional depiction of him. Like, he's depicted as a fool, a clown, fucking goof. I mean, I don't think he needs any more, but him dying early also only left it for us to be able to understand this character through other people's perception of him. And honestly, it's the whole story is told through Hiram's point of view, so everybody is Hiram's perspective of them, right? So I don't know if it would have really mattered because we got Hiram's perspective of him. And honestly, he do sound like a goof and a clown and an entitled brat and just like doing the most. Like, ooh, stop. So I would have been frustrated as hell as like Hiram was if I knew I was fucking like, I'm like, bitch, I am so much better than you at everything. And yet I have to chauffeur you around. I have to babysit you, make sure you not getting into trouble. Like, I'd be waiting on you hand and foot. Nah, son. Nah. Get out of here. So, anywho's, I wasn't upset that he passed, that he died, okay? Drowned. So, I know that probably sounds bad, but I don't care. Moving along. Other interesting characters, his father. His father was a very interesting character who expressed a lot of like he was full of contradictions is what his father was. His character was just full of contradictions. And I think from Hiram's perspective, that was probably why we got that conflicting characterization, because I don't think if some of the other characters in this story was telling that story, we would have gotten the perspective on his father that we got. We would have gotten it as like straight up the human trafficker that he is, and none of this other guilt, none of this other trying to do right by, none of this other like soft spot ish that he got going on for Hiram, because that's his blood. And he sees things about himself in Hiram that is damn sure not there in Maynard. So that was also very interesting character. All the characters are, I'm going to keep saying that. I'm talking about the characters that I found interesting. So obviously, another major character was this member of the Quality named Corinne. I don't want to get into Corinne right now because she gonna make me mad. But she is a very interesting character in which she did awful things. And she did awful things to Hiram. But Hiram was not capable of like truly hating her, kind of because of the purpose in which she did those things. And that was true for like a lot of the other characters, a lot of her comrades did not necessarily agree with her tactics, at least the ones who lived further in the north, not the other Virginians, but did not agree with the tactics she used, but they also didn't condemn her, you know what I'm saying? Like they condoned her actions. They didn't agree with them, but they were like, yeah, she get the job done, you know, sort of thing. Like that's what she believes in. She's fighting the good fight, sort of thing. So that to me, honestly, I would have been hard fucking pressed to get over the torture in which was inflicted to Hiram, because no one can argue with me that it was anything but torture. But okay, don't argue with me, argue with your mammy, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, and another thing about Corinne, I wish I had my notes. They're on my phone, so I can't look at them. But I know I took a lot of notes around. There's a time in which after Hiram comes back to Virginia, he leaves Virginia for a period of time and he comes back to Virginia, and his interactions with Corinne from that point onward are really, it's a very interesting perspective that he has of her. And it's a perspective, it's a recognition of her motives that really speak to me, and I think speak a lot to people's motives that I see today who call themselves allies, right? Whereas it's not about the humanity of the people in which you're in allyship with, is very centered on you. And in Corinne's case, how people who share your qualityness, read that as whiteness, people who share that aspect of identity with you, the way they behave and how that reflects on you and what that means about your humanity. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very self-centered motivation, and that is often why it's very easy for people in that position to seemingly be fighting for the same goal, but their tactics are so contradictory to the humanity of the people in whom they claim to be supporting. Is wild to me, and very present and occurring. You know what I'm saying? So We also had like Harriet Tubman was on the scene. The first time Harriet Tubman was mentioned, I was like, that's very random. We already know like the setting, the scene has been very well established. Like we know where we are. You don't need to like randomly mention Harriet Tubman. But then she comes back and is a very prominent character for like a chunk of the book as Hiram tries to learn a little bit more about this gift that he has. Which, by the way, it took him too fucking long to figure out, hey, who else was I told has this ability? Harriet Tubman. And then when Harriet Tubman happens to save my ass because I'm being a dumbass, I don't ask her. It takes him several times. The third time, the second time he sees her, but like not immediately, like a little bit, like maybe the second day of the second time he sees her or something, to be like, I should go over there and ask Harriet about this thing that I only know the two of us have. Like other people might have it, but I only know about the two of us having it, and I don't know how to control mine or use it. Anyways, Hiram irritates me. But that's not even the main reason why he irritates me. That is a reason why he irritates me. The main reason why he irritates me is the way in which he, for the majority of the book up until the end, this is Hiram really saved himself. Like his character growth. He grows a lot. I mean, the book, he is a boy when the book starts. So there's that. And then he's a young man in his early like 20-ish. Who's extremely annoying to me, but then he grows a lot over the course of the book. So anyways, the main reason why he irritates me is the way in which he thinks and interacts with this particular character named Sophia, whom I really like. So Sophia is a woman on the Lockless estate where Hiram is born, but she's actually not. She wasn't born there. She was born somewhere else, and she was human trafficked to Lockless. And he kind of meets her and starts developing a friendship, and he's interested in her, but she is being, what is even the word? But they know he knows that there's like, well, he develops a real interest in her, and she kind of has a much more like settled interest in him. It's much more like friendship initially. Because she's like, my life is hard enough. And also I'm not trying like, nah, I already had a boo thing. I don't need a new one. I'm also not trying to go from like this white dude thinking he owned me to you thinking you own me and not being free. I want freedom. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about all the characters, but those are all the characters that I'm going to talk about. And Sophia is a badass. Like I enjoy the way in which she moved in her circumstances, and kind of her whole perspective, because there was the amount of time she checked Hiram in this for me. I said, thank you. Okay. I should talk about his like mother figure. But I'm gonna leave that for you to read. But she's also great and checks Hiram and many ways. For the interest of time, I'm gonna keep going because I'm realizing this is a really long video. So next up is themes. I'm gonna talk very briefly about them. There is a heavy theme of the power of remembering and also the burden that has on those who've experienced trauma. But the power that holds and the ability to, as well as the role that remembering has in who you are. So like the role that your past, your history, your people's past, your people's history has on who you are. So that goes along with like the ancestor recognition that was in the book that I felt. The theme of freedom, like what does it mean to be free? Are you really free if those that you love are still in bondage? How strong is your freedom? There was this really good line that maybe I can read before the phone storage gets ran up, but it was by a woman who had just been separated from her human trafficker, and so they were reassuring her that she was free. And so it kind of, the passage goes like this, and the names may be different in the final version of the book. This is about halfway through the book, literally, because this is on page 201. "It's a good city, ma'am," said Peter, "and we're strong here. But I understand if you don't want to stay. Either way, we're going to help how we can. As you will soon see, finding freedom is only the first part. Living free is a whole other." There was a moment of silence. I had stopped writing, thinking the interview terminated. Mary Bronson had stopped crying now. She wiped her face with William's handkerchief, and then she looked up and said, "Ain't no living free, less I'm living with my boys." She had composed herself now. I could see that her pain and fear were shifting into something else. "I don't want to hear about your church. Don't want to hear about your city. My boys, they the only city I need. Now you done found a way to get me out, and by God, I am thankful for it. I was raised correct. I am thankful. But my boys, all of my lost boys, that is my highest concern." "Mrs. Brunson," said Peter, "we just ain't set up like that. That just ain't in our power." "Then you ain't got no power of freedom," she said. "If you can't keep them from parting a mother from her son, a husband from his natural wife, then you got nothing. That boy over there is my everything. I run for him so he might know some other world. Left on my own, I would have died as I was born, a slave. That boy freed me, you see. And I owe him so much. Mostly I owe him his pappy and his brothers. If you can't stop them from breaking us up, as they do, if you can't put us back together, then your freedom is thin, and your church and your city hold nothing for me." Boy, I wrote that page number down so quick. She said, your freedom is thin, okay? And all that shit you talking ain't got no place with me, okay? Can we do this thing or not, okay? You're gonna have to stop using the word freedom. Anywho, freedom is a theme. So is family. So also that quote was a good transition to that. Family, and what that means and how those look and how those can be broken by circumstance, and what the impact of that is. As well as other themes, the power or the magic of a story, which is a very obvious theme because of conduction. I'm not gonna explain anything I'm saying. You'll figure out when you read the book. But they are like spoilery. Agency. What is agency? How does that look? Especially for the women in this story. This perspective, of course, may be biased because I identify as a woman, but the themes around agency, especially when it came to women's autonomy and ability to make decisions, when it came to the men in their lives, was very forefront for me, especially when it came to how Hiram's perspective on the women in his life, and especially Sophia. So that whole relationship is very interesting. That whole dynamic is very interesting. As well as the most poignant, prominent theme for me, which is the psychology of America, and the fact that how America's foundation is built. Like, America is literally built on the backs and by people of color, specifically Black people. And there is no America without that. Those are atrocities that were committed. And therefore, America's desire to forget these atrocities makes America make no sense. America makes no sense. I hate it here. Listen, I'm trying to go to, what was the name of that? Amzayuni, from the Binti. I'm just trying to be out, okay? I don't think I'm gifted enough for it, but I'll try. I'm putting my application, okay? I'm ready to go. Anyways, so those are the themes. Overall, I enjoyed the book. I don't know if I would use the word enjoyed, actually, but overall, I found the book very interesting and good read. I found it very thought-provoking. Yeah, so I definitely am glad I read it. I think I will. Oh, so the book at this point is full star for setting, full star for characters, full star for theme, for sure. My overall enjoyment for it, I'll give it half a star. I've issue with the pacing in parts of the book throughout. Like, there's several spots throughout the book where I have major issues with the pacing, to the point where that the way in which it ended was so frustrating to me, because the whole book leads up to a point that the writing around that point fell so short for me, especially considering that Ta-Nehisi's writing tends to be very poetic and very kind of like, his writing tends to be like a mouthful, but in like a very, me personally, I like it. I like that. I tend to like that if it's done well, just where you have to kind of savor the words, because we're taking each bit as it comes, and it's very, very full of prose, right? But the ending, to the point where the whole story was leading up to, when it comes to, my fucking eye, okay. The whole point of the story and what it's leading up to, around his ability to actually do the conduction, and his ability to remember his mother, and his ability to get the people who he's trying to get out of bondage. All of that leads up to a point in which I then felt like the writing actually fell short. I don't think it was like, there wasn't even enough words dedicated to that part of the story. It was so short. I feel like the story just like quickly wrapped up, and it left me wanting so much more than what I got. And it was actually really weird because I couldn't picture that part of the story, which was weird because Hiram was telling a story and I couldn't actually picture the story he was telling. And because that's such a climactic part of the book, that really dampened my enjoyment for the book overall, as well as the other spots with the pacing of the book where I felt like, honestly, damn, what happened, editor? Like, you could have took stuff from other spots for sure. This was a page or word limit concern. You could have fixed that. Or just like add the rest of the pages. I would have read the extra like 20 pages. Anyways, I digress. So half star for that. And then so I liked it, but I didn't love it, essentially. And the last kind of point star for the rating system is whether or not I would recommend the book, or who I'd recommend it to, and whether or not I'm going to purchase it. So I would definitely recommend the book as a read to just about anybody. I think that many people struggle with nonfiction, and many people struggle with facing the atrocities of the world and the people who are in it, and tend to be able to approach that when it's set in a fictional setting. And so this book, I think, has just enough fictional elements to make it approachable to a lot of people who maybe the story wouldn't have been approachable before, but it's set in a very real and present past, and I would argue present, honestly. And yeah, so I would recommend it for most people. I would recommend it for just about anyone. If anything that I said about the book interests you in any way, I would read it. Hell, if it didn't interest you, I would still read it. Anyways, whether or not I'm going to purchase it. So as you can see, I do have my hands on an advanced copy. I just might not give this back and then keep this one. I don't think I'm not planning on purchasing the book myself, but I might keep. I haven't decided if I'm giving this back or not. Am I a book thief? That's for history to decide. Anyways, thank you. Oh, so just to wrap it up, for those of you joining, because you didn't want spoilers, The Water Dancer was a good read for me. I liked it, but I didn't love it. A lot of the I didn't love it had to do with pacing. But overall, it had excellent characters and themes. And I am not planning on purchasing it, but I may keep my advanced reader copy that I borrowed. And I would rate it, so I gave it 2 half stars. How many? Let me count. 4 stars. I don't know why I had to count. Gave it 3 whole stars for world building, characters, and themes, and then a half star for my overall enjoyment because I liked it but didn't love it, and a half star for the recommend/purchase because I would recommend the others read it, but I am not planning on purchasing it myself now that I have read it. So this has been lovely talking with you all. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it. Please comment down below if you've read Water Dancer or if you're interested in it. What about it interests you? If you read it, what was your most prominent theme for you. Write it down below. And I hope you all have a lovely day. Again, like, subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Bye.